A poor student helped a stranger study, not knowing she was a billionaire in disguise. The irony of this simple act of kindness would soon unravel into the most transformative chapter of Alex Chen's life. Though on that rain-soaked Tuesday evening, it had seemed like just another obligation in his overwhelmed existence. The library's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across textbooks splayed open like wounded birds. Alex's eyes burned from too many consecutive hours of reading, his third coffee gone cold beside a stack of past-due notices he couldn't bear to open. 23 years old and drowning, in student loans, in grief over his mother's recent passing, in the relentless fatigue of working 2 jobs while maintaining his scholarship. His fingertips were stained with highlighter ink, his stomach hollow with hunger he'd learned to ignore. Outside, November rain pelted the windows, matching the rhythm of anxious thoughts tapping against his consciousness. Rent due Friday, morning shift at the cafe starting in 6 hours, midterm exams looming like executioners. "Excuse me," a soft voice cut through his fog of exhaustion. "I'm sorry to bother you, but you look like you understand this material." Alex blinked up to find a woman gesturing toward his advanced biochemistry textbook. She wasn't the typical university student, maybe early 30s, dressed in simple jeans and an oversized gray sweater that had seen better days. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her face clean of makeup except for smudges of exhaustion beneath intelligent eyes. "I've been staring at these same equations for hours," she continued, hugging a similar textbook to her chest. "The tutoring center closed and She hesitated, something like embarrassment flickering across her features. "I really can't afford to fail this class." Alex's immediate instinct was to politely decline. His time was the only currency he possessed, and he was already bankrupting his health to stretch each day to its breaking point. But something in her expression, a vulnerability that mirrored his own desperate determination, made him slide his notes across the table instead. "Pull up a chair," he said. "I'm Alex." "Elise," she replied with a grateful smile that momentarily transformed her tired features. Elise Tao. What began as 20 minutes of explanation stretched into 2 hours. Alex discovered that Elise was taking night classes while working days, though she remained vague about her employment. She asked incisive questions that occasionally challenged even his understanding, forcing him to reconsider concepts he thought he'd mastered. There was something oddly compelling about her, intense focus paired with flashes of self-deprecating humor, and moments when her eyes seemed to hold wisdom beyond the struggles she described. "You're a natural teacher," she told him as they finally packed up near midnight. "Have you ever considered it as a career?" Alex smiled wryly. "Can't afford to consider much beyond surviving until graduation." Something shifted in her expression, a shadow of what might have been guilt, before she nodded. "Same boat. Though I suppose there are different kinds of poverty." She hesitated before adding, "I have class again Thursday." "Same time?" Against all practical judgment, Alex heard himself agree. That night, curled beneath the thin blanket in his apartment, where the heat worked only intermittently, Alex dreamed of his mother. She appeared as she had before the cancer, strong hands kneading bread dough, telling him stories of her childhood in Taiwan, of starting over in America with nothing but determination. "The measure of wealth," she would say, "is what you give when your hands seem empty." He woke with tears drying on his face and her voice echoing in his mind. Thursday arrived with bitter cold and new worries. His younger sister had called from her freshman dorm room with concerns about her own tuition installment. The cafe manager had cut his hours. The check engine light had flared to life in his ancient Honda. Yet somehow he still found himself at the library that evening, watching the door for Elise. She arrived bundled in the same insufficient jacket, her cheeks flushed from the cold, carrying 2 paper cups that steamed in the winter air. "I thought you might need this," she said, placing one before him. "It's just the campus coffee, nothing fancy." The simple gesture, to be the one receiving care rather than providing it, caught Alex off guard. When was the last time someone had considered his needs? His throat tightened unexpectedly. "Thank you," he managed, the words feeling inadequate. Their study sessions became a weekly constant. Alex learned that Elise was pursuing biochemistry with a focus on affordable medical treatments, though she deflected most personal questions with practiced ease. She never mentioned family, spoke of her apartment only in terms of its proximity to campus, and changed the subject whenever conversation veered toward her past. What she did reveal came in small glimpses. Her fluency in 3 languages, a childhood spent between continents, and encyclopedic knowledge of global health initiatives. When Alex remarked on this last point, she shrugged and murmured something about following the news. December arrived with bitter winds and final exams. Alex's carefully constructed schedule began to crack under the pressure. The night before his most difficult final, his car refused to start, forcing him to miss his evening shift at the warehouse. The lost wages meant choosing between electricity and food for the coming week. He arrived at their regular study session distracted and hollow-eyed, his hands trembling slightly from too much caffeine and too little sleep. No. What's wrong? Elise asked immediately. Nothing, Alex replied automatically, then reconsidering everything. But nothing talking will fix. She studied him with that penetrating gaze that sometimes made him wonder what she saw. Try me. The dam broke. Alex found himself confessing everything. His mother's medical debts that he'd taken on after her death, his sister's college expenses he helped cover, the impossible mathematics of his monthly budget, the looming threat of having to abandon his education when he was so close to finishing. I'm sorry, he said finally, embarrassed by the outburst. You don't need my problems. Elise was quiet for so long that Alex looked up, expecting to find discomfort or pity. Instead, her expression held something like resolve, perhaps even guilt. What if, she said carefully, I could help with a small loan? Just to get you through until… No, Alex cut her off, pride flaring hot and immediate. Absolutely not. I appreciate it, but we barely know each other. And you're a student too. She looked as though she might argue, then nodded once. I understand. When they parted that night, she hugged him briefly, the first physical contact they'd shared. Sometimes the universe balances itself, she said cryptically. Just stay open to possibilities. The next morning, Alex received an email notification that he'd been awarded an anonymous emergency scholarship that would cover his remaining tuition and a stipend for living expenses. His academic advisor couldn't explain it, only that a private donor had specified him by name. Elise missed their next scheduled meeting, and the one after. January returned with empty library tables and no word from his study partner. Alex tried the phone number she'd given him, only to find it disconnected. He inquired at the registrar's office, but there was no record of an Elise Tao enrolled in biochemistry courses, or any courses at all. As weeks passed, Alex gradually accepted that whatever brief connection they'd shared had ended. Perhaps she'd been embarrassed by his financial confessions. Perhaps she'd completed her course and moved on. The mystery of the scholarship remained unsolved, though Alex suspected some university emergency fund had simply found his name on a list of struggling students. Life improved incrementally. With the scholarship covering his basic needs, Alex reduced his work hours and focused on his studies. His grades rose, his health improved. By early March, he was breathing easier than he had in years, even setting aside small amounts for his sister's next term. Then came the letter. It arrived in a simple white envelope, hand-delivered to his department mailbox. Inside was a business card for Tao Innovative Pharmaceuticals and a note in familiar handwriting. Central Park Cafe, Thursday at 4. Please come. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs as confused thoughts collided. Tao Pharmaceuticals was one of the world's largest medical research companies, known for both cutting-edge treatments and controversial pricing structures. Its founder and CEO, Elizabeth Tao, was notoriously private, a brilliant scientist and businesswoman whose rare public appearances made headlines in financial and scientific communities alike. Surely his Elise couldn't be. The cafe was upscale but not ostentatious, occupying a quiet corner near the university's research facilities. Alex arrived early, his palms damp with nervous anticipation. He'd researched obsessively for days, finding precious few photos of Elizabeth Tao online, mostly blurred images of a woman with dark hair obscured by security personnel or captured from disadvantageous angles. At precisely 4 o'clock, she walked in. Elise, yet not quite the Elise he'd known. Her hair fell in sleek waves instead of the practical ponytail. Her clothing was simple, but expertly tailored. The only familiar elements were her eyes and the slight hesitation in her smile as she spotted him. You came, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Alex stared, words temporarily beyond his grasp. You're Elizabeth Tao, he finally managed. Chief Executive Officer of Tao Pharmaceuticals. Sir, 34 years old. Net worth estimated at… Please don't, she interrupted, wincing slightly. Those numbers are meaningless. Meaningless? The word emerged sharper than he intended. You pretended to be a struggling student. You let me… His voice caught as memories flooded back. sharing his last protein bar when she mentioned skipping lunch, offering her his backup umbrella during a downpour, spending hours explaining concepts she probably understood better than he did. "I never lied about needing help," she said quietly, "just not with biochemistry." The waitress approached, but Elizabeth, gently waved her away. 3 years ago, she continued, "I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition, the same one that killed my father. We developed the treatment at my company, but..." She paused, her fingers tracing patterns on the wooden table. "Science is easy. People are hard. I've spent my life in labs and boardrooms, Alex. I understand molecules better than motivations. When my board began pushing for pricing structures that would make our treatments inaccessible to most patients, I realized I'd lost touch with why I became a scientist in the first place." Alex remained silent, trying to reconcile the woman before him with both the struggling student he'd befriended and the billionaire pharmaceutical magnate from his research. "So I went back to school," she said, not officially, just sitting in classrooms, observing, trying to remember what it felt like to struggle, to need something vital you couldn't afford. Her eyes met his directly. "And then I met you." The air between them seemed charged with unspoken complications. "The scholarship," Alex said, understanding dawning. Elizabeth nodded. "A small fraction of what your kindness was worth. You were drowning, yet you still reached out to help someone else. Someone who didn't need help." Alex countered, an edge of bitterness creeping into his voice. "I needed exactly what you gave me," she said firmly. "Not tutoring. Perspective. Humanity." She reached into her bag and withdrew a folder. "That's why I'm here now. I have a proposition." Inside the folder was a proposal for a new division within Tau Pharmaceuticals, an accessibility initiative designed to make cutting-edge treatments available regardless of patients' financial circumstances. The proposed director of the program would be responsible for developing equitable pricing models, outreach to underserved communities, and advocacy within the medical industry. "You want me to work for you?" Alex said slowly, scanning the documents. "I want you to work with me," Elizabeth corrected. "Your perspective, your experience, your mother's illness and its financial aftermath, these give you insights my executive team lacks. You understand both the science and the human cost in a way few people do." Alex felt lightheaded, possibilities expanding and contracting like a living thing in his chest. "This position, the salary is appropriate for the expertise required," she finished firmly. "You'd start after graduation, of course. And there's no obligation. If you're not interested, the scholarship remains yours, no strings attached." She hesitated, then added more softly, "Though I hope you'll consider it. Our study sessions were the most honest conversations I've had in years." Alex looked down at the proposal, then back at the woman across from him. Billionaire CEO, deceptive stranger, unexpected friend. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to decide now," Elizabeth said, "but there's something else I should tell you." She drew a deep breath. "The treatment we developed for my condition, it's the same one that might have saved your mother, had it been available sooner." The words landed like physical blows. Alex's vision blurred momentarily with tears he refused to shed in this public place, grief and anger colliding. "Is that supposed to make me feel better about working with you?" "No," she answered quietly. "It's why I need you to work with me, so the next son doesn't lose his mother because innovative treatments are locked behind financial walls." Her voice wavered slightly. "I can't change what happened to your family, but together maybe we can change what happens to others." April sunlight streamed through the cafe windows, warming the space between them. In that light, Alex could see the shadows beneath Elizabeth's composed exterior. The weight of privilege and responsibility, the isolation of extraordinary wealth, the genuine plea in her eyes. "I have conditions," he said finally. A smile touched her lips. "I expected nothing less." 2 years later, Alex stood at a podium in Geneva, Switzerland, addressing the World Health Organization's annual assembly. Behind him sat Elizabeth Tau, no longer the world's most reclusive pharmaceutical billionaire, but now the most controversial, hailed as a visionary by patient advocates and derided as a traitor by industry traditionalists. The Tau Accessibility Initiative had revolutionized treatment availability across 3 continents. Their sliding scale pricing model had been adopted by 2 competing pharmaceutical giants. Most significantly, the treatment that came too late for Alex's mother had now reached over 20,000 patients who would previously have been unable to afford it. "The measure of wealth," Alex concluded his speech, echoing his mother's words, "is what you give when your hands seem empty." True innovation isn't measured in patents or profits, but in lives improved and suffering alleviated. As applause filled the auditorium, he caught Elizabeth's eye. Between them passed the silent acknowledgement of how far they'd come from that rain-soaked library evening. A poor student and a disguised billionaire, each with something vital the other needed. Later, walking along Lake Geneva, Elizabeth asked the question that had become their private ritual. Worth it? Alex considered the complexity of their journey. The initial deception, the uncomfortable truths, the revolutionary changes they'd initiated, the lives saved. He thought of his sister, now pursuing medical research with a fellowship from the Tao Foundation. He remembered his mother's hands, strong and generous despite having so little. Worth it, he confirmed. Though I still think you should have just introduced yourself properly. Elizabeth laughed, the sound carrying across the water. And miss out on your incredible biochemistry tutorials? I still can't believe you sat through hours of me explaining concepts you probably pioneered, Alex said, shaking his head. Best education I ever received, she replied, her expression growing serious. You taught me something no Ivy League institution could, how to see the world through eyes unclouded by privilege. She paused, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold. Some disguises reveal more truth than they conceal. As they continued their walk, Alex reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them here. A chance meeting, a simple act of kindness offered when he had nothing to spare, had cascaded into thousands of lives saved and a global shift in medical accessibility. The poor student and the billionaire in disguise had both been transformed by what they'd found in each other. Not just knowledge or resources, but the courage to reimagine what was possible when compassion guided innovation. The evening light softened around them, illuminating not what separated them, but what they had built together. A bridge between worlds that had seemed impossibly distant, constructed from the most basic materials of human connection, empathy, authenticity, and the willingness to see beyond surfaces to the truth beneath.